Wassail, welcome to Rune Revival. Have you ever wondered how we English speakers can all understand each other despite our different accents? That's because our brains can work out which phones other speakers are using so long as their pattern is not too different from our own. In this sense, a phone just means a specific sound. So, oo as in goose is one phone, and a as in trap is a different phone. Some of you may have even learnt your 5 vowels in school as a, e, I, o, u. Is that how you were taught? Now you might be wondering, what does this have to do with runes? The main problem with writing today's English in runes is working out which runes belong with which phones. For consonants, that's not too hard. There may be some debate when it comes to what Dr. Jeff Lindsay calls train changing and drum majoring, but this video will tackle the real problem: vowels. Take a look at this IPA Vowel Space Diagram. This chart is for the vowel in the keyword trap. Put simply, they indicate how likely a native English speaker, randomly chosen as a representative of their accent, is to use that specific phone in the keyword. Make sense? If you're thinking, why are so many people using the schwa in trap? It's not because they're saying trip, rather, it's because they're sliding the vowel. Trap. It's for this sort of reason that I've color-coded the results. Whichever phone ranks as the most popular choice for a set is always gold. Second and third are orange, then any others scoring over 5% are pink, anything under 5% is blue, which generally represents a localized variation. As we go through the keywords, keep your eye on how the golden number moves around the vowel space. That will help you understand how certain words end up merging in different directions in different dialects. Between sets, I'll show you a pie chart for the phones of the previous set. But given the length of this video, I won't talk too much about them. Feel free to pause if you wish to examine one more closely. Looking at the trap set, as you can see, only unrounded vowels are used. Almost 1/3 of us use the front near open vowel. Either side of it, the open and open mid vowels roughly balance each other for how different dialects have shifted the trap vowel. Again, the front close mid vowel and the central open vowel also roughly balance each other. So, can you see how, across all dialects, English speakers are aiming to approximate the near open front vowel when saying trap? Here's the pie chart. Note that it also includes the y consonant, which of course does not appear on the vowel space diagram. It occurs in accents which have advanced the I slide so far that it has moved out of the vowel space. For all intents and purposes, this won't matter to us except for one keyword. Can you guess which one? Moving on, we have the bath set. Or is it the bath set? Notice how this set has shifted its golden phone from the near open vowel of trap to the fully open front vowel. If you compare its second and third places, along with what I was saying before about subsequent phones, with those of the previous set, what do you notice? As I'm sure this channel's viewers are intelligent people, I'll let you answer that. As we progress through the next few sets, notice how the dialectal vowels gradually shift from the open front vowel across to the central and back vowels, but when they reach the back, they can begin to round. Here's the pie chart. Next we have the first vowel in father. Notice here how, although the rounded open back vowel is the most popular phone, the pyramid is not built evenly as it was for the previous 2 lexical sets. Instead, the open central vowel is almost just as common. Some speakers even say it as feather with the trap vowel. So what is it that distinguishes the father vowel from other sets? I would propose that there are two factors. One, the vowel is unrounded, and two, it is a fully open vowel. Do you agree? Here's the pie chart. When it comes to the lot vowel, the pyramid structure begins to return, but it's still a little lopsided. The key difference from the father vowel to observe here is how the lot vowel is rounded in the majority of accents. However, it also remains an open vowel for most speakers. Again, notice that once a vowel can't move any further back, it then rounds and begins to close. Here's the pie chart. For the first time in these charts, you'll notice the golden phone has not moved. For the cloth vowel, it is still the rounded open back vowel, as it was for lot. But what do you notice about the percentages for the unrounded vowels, especially the open and central back vowels? As a reminder, for lot, those two phones totaled over 38%. A minor point worth mentioning here is how the schwa appears for the cloth vowel, whereas nobody slides the lot vowel. Here's the pie chart. With the thought vowel, speakers now begin to close their jaws. The pyramid structure hasn't quite returned, but it at least looks a bit more balanced around the rounded open mid back vowel. Although the symbol for that phone may look like a turned C, it's actually named open O, which reflects its nature as one of the O-type vowels. Here's the pie chart. Before moving on, let's recap. So far we've covered two front vowels, trap and bath, two back vowels, cloth and thought, and between them we find the two vowels which split from either, that is, the two open vowels, father and lot. Can you see how these 6 sets align with the runes Ash, Ors, and Ark? Long-term viewers of Rune Revival will remember how we've previously suggested using double Ash for the bath vowel if it needs to be distinguished from both the trap and father vowels. In a similar way, although there is some variation across accents, it can generally be said that the lot and thought vowels play second fiddle to the father and cloth vowels, respectively. In light of that, could they be distinguished in a similar way, as shown on screen? The idea here is that not everyone needs to distinguish the vowels which play second fiddle. In many cases, they're merged into one of the sets either side of them. Moving on from the thought vowel, I next want to cover the goat diphthong. After creating these diagrams, it occurred to me that for the sliding vowels, I probably should have separated the onset phones from their target phones for each set. But seeing I didn't think of that earlier, you'll find that the target phone consistently wins first place for all the diphthongs. So, what we see for the goat vowel is that its target phone is the rounded near-close back vowel, while its second and third places are its most common onset phones. The latter of those is the golden phone of thought, but look at how far behind second place it trails. In light of that, would you agree that it's reasonable to designate the rounded close mid back vowel as its usual onset? Obviously, there is a lot of variation when it comes to the goat vowel, but its pie chart makes it pretty clear which phones are dominant. If we compare it with the mouth vowel, you can again see that it's also targeting the rounded close-mid back phone. However, its onset is fronted, typically being equivalent to the phone of either the trap or bath vowel, although that should be pronounced bath, I suppose. Again, there is a lot of misapproximation with, for example, the I-type vowels appearing among those who use triphthongs, but as a general rule, that holds true. Its pie chart initially doesn't look as clear as that of goat until you realize these 6 phones form the front open quadrant. Now look at your foot, vowel. There's not much to explain here. Its golden phone is so far ahead, second place doesn't even rate above 10%. All of the non-blue placings are just misapproximations of the near-close back vowel. Only one of those has unrounded it. Here's your foot pie chart. The goose vowel, of course, occupies the same quadrant, although it is typically fully closed. The various minorities you see here are mainly the result of slides. As you may have guessed, the goose vowel plays second fiddle to the foot vowel. Here's the goose pie chart. Recapping those 4, we have the foot vowel as in put, and the goose vowel as in vacuum. Logically, they should respectively use ur and double ur. When it comes to the sliding vowels, sounds similar to both of these are known historically from the Anglo-Saxon runic corpus. We can base our decisions upon them. The mouth vowel neatly slides from ash to ur, making ash-ur the obvious choice for a digraph to represent it. The goat vowel begins squarely between goose and thought. Given how there is no single rune representing that position, and that it slides anyway, ors ur fits the bill well. Some of you might protest that the word soul was historically written with the digraph arc-ur. However, may I point out that at the time that slide began with an open vowel, so that made sense. But for most speakers today, the goat vowel is much more closed. Nonetheless, for speakers with the soul split within the goat set, like myself, using arc-ur before lagu may be a viable option should we need to distinguish these sounds. After all, would that missing short branch really confuse any readers? Moving on. As you may recall, Proto-Germanic had no central vowels, only back vowels and front vowels. Here we encounter its legacy with a long jump from the rounded close back phone to the unrounded close front phone of fleece. In this case, even third place fails to rank over 5%. There's not much to comment on here apart from noting how those who merge this vowel into the price set make a ripple on the ocean. Here's the pie chart. Frequently similar to the fleece vowel, linguists distinguish the last vowel in happy as a free vowel, meaning that it can't be followed by a consonant, whereas those of the lexical sets into which it so frequently merges can be. You'll notice here how it's less likely to be fully closed than fleece is. So behold, the happy pie chart. Mirroring the foot vowel on the front side of the chart, we have the kit vowel, only it's even more solidly cemented in most speakers' tongues. The observant among you may have noticed some switching of phones with fleece, but when we look at the pie charts, it's crystal clear which is which in the minds of most. In regards to runes, Whereas until now our choices have been restricted by a lack of available characters, from this point on we can enjoy a little more freedom. For the I-type vowels, we have is, io, and er. However, we must also keep in mind the need to consider the rhotic equivalents of the vowels we've already covered. Consequently, although there's no chart for it, I want to briefly mention the non-rhotic sliding diphthong used in words such as vehement and vehicle in various accents. This is the non-rhotic equivalent of the rhotic near vowel in its sliding form. The reason for mentioning it is because of how the lexical set's keywords pair with one another. Most speakers who slide the near vowel begin it with the kit vowel and slide it towards the schwa. However, most speakers who do not slide the near vowel equate it to the rhotic form of the fleece vowel. Consequently, rhotic speakers also have a tendency towards using the fleece vowel in vehement or vehement and vehicle or vehicle. This leaves us with a little problem because the near vowel effectively plays second fiddle to the fleece vowel in rhotic accents, but to the kit vowel in non-rhotic accents. On the other hand, the happy vowel more regularly plays second fiddle to the fleece vowel. Despite that, almost no one has a need to distinguish the happy vowel specifically in writing because almost everyone merges its sound into another lexical set. That being the case, the main three I-type vowels which need to be represented are the lexical sets of kit, fleece, and near. As there are also three I-type runes, one can be assigned to each of them. Now please note, these runes are not being randomly assigned. Is was historically used for the short tense I-type vowel, as in kit. Io, as we have discussed in other videos, represented the sound known as unstable I, which at times became the sound some speakers today use in fleece. Again, was historically used for the near diphthong even before it shifted up the vowel space. This results in a situation where rhotic speakers would use io for their non-rhotic fleece vowel, but before rad for their rhotic near vowel. Meanwhile, non-rhotic speakers remain capable of distinguishing all the subtle differences their accents require. As that, in effect, pairs io with that leaves is unpaired. So although it's largely unnecessary, double is could be used for the happy vowel. For although those dialects which do need to uniquely distinguish the happy vowel tend to use a short vowel, they are nonetheless proximate to dialects which pronounce it with a long vowel, and thus the digraph would still make sense to those who have a need to use it. Moving on from the closed front vowels, we now have the dress vowel. As stated in the last video, it plays fairly neatly within the front mid-quadrant, although it has a strong tendency towards the open midphone. The rune used for this sound is of course e. Here's its pie chart. Having covered every quadrant, we now shift to the center of the vowel space. Here we find almost all of us use the schwa for the final vowel in comma. Those using the near open central vowel may be merging it with their strut vowel. A few other localized alternatives exist. For example, Fijians use the open front vowel without a slide. But when we look at the pie chart, could the results be any clearer? As you may already know, practically everyone uses this vowel in quick speech as a substitute for something else. Again, there's almost no need for a double form of this rune aside from when ordering hors d'oeuvres, if your accent retains its non-rhotic, elongated or tense form before the V sound. Now for the vowel for which we've received the most adamant feedback, the strut vowel. Please note that I placed the unrounded open mid central third, but put the near close back vowels result in pink because the latter represents speakers who have not split this vowel from the foot vowel. That is, they say foot and strut. As they don't need this set anyway, we may as well exclude them from our analysis. In previous versions of the touchstone, we had suggested that the strut vowel should be paired with the father vowel. The reason for this is that both of their phone sets cluster around the open back quadrant. However, you'll notice on this chart that the strut vowel is hardly ever a fully open vowel, whereas the father vowel is almost always a fully open vowel. Consequently, I must extend my thanks to those of you who persisted in your protests while insisting that these vowels should not be paired. You were right, my Aussie accent was getting in the way there. Thank you for correcting me. I'm sorry I wouldn't listen to you earlier. Given how this sound split from the foot vowel, in the last video I suggested using this rune for it. To remain consistent with the name of Ur, that would mean calling this rune Ar, as in hurry or burra. Would you be happy with that? If not, what would you suggest calling it, given how most English speakers can no longer pronounce its historic name, Ir? While you look at the pie chart, there's little need for a doubled form of this rune. However, if its single form represents a split from the foot vowel, then its double form might reasonably represent a split from the goose vowel. In that category, we have the ghoul split within the goose set. This situation is similar to the previously discussed soul split within the goat set. It only occurs before lagu. The exact direction it occurs in may vary by accent. Are you ready for the rhotic vowels? Here we'll be including vowels followed by in the following syllable, as they can very easily become rhoticized vowels. So, let's return to where we began. The trap vowel may be followed by in words such as arrow or marry. What other examples can you think of? As we have no data on this, let's move on to the start vowel. It's used in words like Mario and aria. Now, let's compare its vowel space diagram with that of father. Can you see the similarity? Here are their respective pie charts. In light of that, are we all content to write the start vowel as rad? Next we have the north vowel. Note how it compares to the thought vowel. Despite the rhotic vowel being a bit more closed, they both give the golden phone to the open mid-back vowel. The rhotic form is also more likely to slide. This vowel is used in the word horse, as in the animal. Its short or lax equivalent may either use the cloth or lot vowel followed by as in orange or morrow. Lo the pie charts. Now, watch how the golden phone moves between the north vowel and the force vowel. Did you see that? The force vowel uses the phone associated with the onset of the goat vowel. In my accent, This vowel is merged into the north vowel anyway, but for those who distinguish them, this vowel is used in hoarse, as in when one's voice is sore. Again, some speakers slide it towards the comma vowel. While you look at the pie charts, as an aside, it's worth mentioning how the rhotic form of the mouth vowel may be found in words such as hour, flower, and Maori in many accents. When it comes to the cure vowel, we find some strange things going on. Firstly, almost a quarter of the total is lost to the y consonant on account of how many accents include a yod in this vowel. Notice how the presence of the near closed front vowel is also due to accents which still use that phone as their yod instead of the consonantal form. Secondly, the schwa is the most common phone. Why is that? It's because the majority of us today slide this vowel. Consequently, it is effectively becoming a rhotic diphthong. Nonetheless, if you look at its two orange phones, you'll see they are the standard foot and goose vowels. Consequently, remains the best rune for denoting the onset phone of this vowel. In light of how a number of accents are yet to start sliding this vowel, and for convenience sake, I would recommend writing the cure vowel with rad. That binds well. But if you really want, you could add ethel before rad to indicate your accent slides this vowel. However, be aware that doing so may make it harder for those who merge this vowel into another set to understand you. As you probably guessed, the two pink vowels are the results of this vowel merging into the force and north vowels. All the other phones are the results of misapproximations. Just briefly, this pie chart for cure includes the y consonant and the schwa. Here's another with those phones excluded. If you couldn't before, can you now see why is this keyword's primary vowel rune? Some examples of words with rhoticized vowels which split from this set as a result of the foot strut split may include hurry and Murray. How do you think they should be written? We've largely already covered the near vowel in our prior technical discussion. What makes it unique is that, as a general rule, rhotic speakers just rhoticize their fleece vowel for near, while non-rhotic speakers diphthongize their kit vowel by sliding it towards their comma vowel to make this sound. While you look at the pie chart, be aware that speakers without the mirror-nearer merger generally use the near vowel in Sirius, but the kit vowel followed by in the star constellation Sirius. As for the square vowel, let's compare it with the dress vowel. As with other rhotic vowels, it's a bit more likely to slide than its non-rhotic counterpart. But is the similarity clear enough for you? This vowel is a rhotic mid-front vowel, despite some misapproximations. Here's its pie chart. This vowel is used in the name Mary, whereas Merry, as in Merry Christmas, uses the dress vowel followed by The final vowel in letter is the best example of a rhoticized comma vowel, although in my accent, letter tends to merge into comma. At the start of words such as array, it is typically distinguishable from the similar nurse vowel in urgent. Pause the video if you want to examine the misapproximations on screen, otherwise, here's the pie chart. Finally, for the rhotic lexical sets, we have the nurse vowel. Although it's typically a central vowel, a few accents merge it with the square vowel. Nonetheless, the schwa remains its golden phone. Based upon their respective vowel space diagrams, assumably it was speakers who use the open mid-central vowel for both nurse and strut who suggested writing them with the same rune. I can't blame you for that, but if we compare their charts, you'll find they're just as distinct from each other as strut is from father. Consequently, that idea doesn't fly, sorry. However, in a variety of accents, when stressed, the letter vowel is pronounced like the nurse vowel anyway. Therefore, to save us all a lot of time writing, may I suggest making the letter vowel play second fiddle to the nurse vowel. You're welcome to look at the pie chart before deciding. Like other diphthongs, the price vowel's golden phone is its usual target. Despite the tie for third, speakers clearly favour beginning this as a fully open vowel over using a front vowel for its onset. Therefore, ark-yor would be more generally recognisable to most accent speakers than ash-yor. However, the latter could serve as a viable alternative price digraph, especially for anyone who says rice and race the same. This option also enables ar-yor to be used for the line-loin merger. In case you're hungry by now, here's the price pie chart. The choice vowel leaves little up for discussion. Is anyone not comfortable using ors-yor for the choice vowel? If so, please explain why with reference to both its pie chart and its vowel space diagram. If you make a video about it, please tag this channel so we know to watch it. Finally, although it usually starts a bit higher than the dress vowel, the face vowel is typically a mid-front vowel sliding towards the kit vowel, so yor is the most obvious choice for it. If you merge face and choice, you may like to use ethel-yor for that. Otherwise, keeping that digraph for the well-documented curl-coil merger may be the best idea. Here are its pie chart and the runic forms of those three lexical sets. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments along with your own ideas. On that note, what rune-related topic would you like to see us cover in a future video? Leave a comment and let us know. Thanks for watching.